Welcome back to the Dynasty Grind. My name is Peter Howard, at PA Howdy on Twitter and Threads and everywhere else you need that. I'm not doing this as I go. The reason we're late is because Zach was like, no one's even in the chat anymore. Like, we don't even have to worry about it. So, like, blame Zach. I'm not tell you. There's no other reason, and it's entirely not my fault. Yeah, it's my fault. But we do a Dynasty show every Wednesday at 9:30, usually, till we get tired, run out of questions, comments, thoughts, or just people to talk to. And that's what we're doing tonight. I'm here with Zach Reed from the Dynasty Dummies podcast. I don't think Outhouse is going to be able to make it tonight, but we, at least, are very happy to be here. So post whatever questions, thoughts, trade, comments, start, sit question, I guess, if you have one of those somehow. Whatever comment box they provide you on whatever streaming platform we happen to be on, because we no longer know. So, Zach, you happy now? We went later. Is that better? Is your idea,
Yeah,
right?
Definitely my fault. I apologize to everybody in the chat, everybody who's been just champing at the bit since 9:30, waiting for us to get here. But we're here now. Everyone is sleeping on everyone. It's great.
That's all I. No one realizes what impact Jamar Chase could have this year. That kind of stuff. That's mostly my timeline. Yeah, what's new with you? What's happening? You made any trades or anything?
No, I have not made any trades. I've been really focused on buying Scott Fishbowl t-shirts. That's been my main fantasy football energy lately. Making songs for the Scott Fishbowl.
Well, that takes effort, concentration. You got to look through the list, consider how it would look on you. Is that my color? Yeah, it's important stuff.
So yeah, it's been very Fishbowl centric. I'm doing the Boston Live draft too, which has turned into the Scott Fishbowl Gala. It has gotten bigger than. We used to do it in a bar right beside Fenway. It's got bigger. It's gotten bigger than that, so it should be a lot of fun. But that's been my.
I keep thinking I have to organize that. I haven't figured out how I'm getting to my live draft or where I'm staying when I get there or anything really. And I should really get on that because I have to do the 4H camp just before it. But you all right? Alan Davis.
I got like 6 fire trucks hanging out outside my house now. I don't know what's going on. If I burst into flames, you guys, you're here for
the camera around. We'll have an entertaining night for a change. Let's go watch that. Alan Davis says, "Good evening, all. Everybody's sleeping on Tampa having a top 10 offense. Ugh. Mayfield finishes as a top 5 QB. Ugh. I mean, Tampa? Probably a little underrated, but I don't think that good.
Like he could be top 5 in Tampa. I mean, who else do they have?
Okay, fair enough. I need Canals to make Bryce Young a top 5 QB.
Yeah,
that's fair. I think he'll have at least some good games in the value bounce back up. That's kind of why my chip's late.
Yeah, and I think that's really what you're going to kind of have to hope. And at this point, I'm not even hoping that I can play Bryce Young. I'm hoping that he gets to a point where I can move Bryce Young. Yeah, which kind of stinks because you're going to lose out. Like if he becomes anything, you're going to lose out because you're going after that like post hype sleeper secondary value. But
I missed my window when you mentioned the Scott Fishbowl. What I did today, fantasy related, was start building my Scott Fishbowl cheat sheet. And something I noticed where you basically have to start 5 players and then you got 6 flit spots. 6 flit spots. And something I noticed is it overemphasizes the scoring requirements of those 5 players. Now, I don't know what to do with that, but it does mean that I think running back value, especially outside the top scorer, is depleted a little bit, even with the adjustments, and wide receiver is improved, which is weird to me because Scott Fishbowl scoring is normally specifically aimed at trying to hurt wide receiver. But I think they might be more powerful because no one has to start a running back too. You know what I mean?
I do.
That was my main thought.
I've been kind of looking at that, and the kind of the way running back really dives, like you said, after that top couple. And then, like, to me, there's an interesting tight end play, and then the return yards with the new kick return format could end up being interesting. Like a 500, the way the fishbowl is set up, 500 kick return yards is basically a receiver with a 1,000-yard season. And so those are interesting. Not that you necessarily have to think about it, but at back end flex play, something like if Greg Dortch becomes a permanent, like if he becomes a permanent starter. So if he's a wide receiver and has 800 yards receiving, but has 600 yards returning because he punts and kicks, all of a sudden he's an 1,800-yard receiver. Like Tyreek Hill, which is ridiculous, but not entirely out of the realm of possibility with the scoring. So it's weird. It's interesting.
I mean, it's a path to relevance of Traylon Burks. That's all I really care about. Justin Fields. For each position, what players are you guys most excited for next season? Now, I was going to hate this question, then I decided I liked it because you're asking what we're excited for, not who our sleepers are, who we're targeting. Yeah, I like it. I'm excited for Richardson. I disagree. I immediately hate this question. No, that's fine. Gibbs, Njigba, and McBride. Njigba is an interesting one to see how that shakes out. McBride, I think, is a little oversold at this point. He's fine, but like Ingram's right there and not nearly the hype. What do you think, Zach? You got a quarterback you're most excited for? I'm really excited for Kyler Murray because everyone seems to be tired of it, but I think he's set up this year better than he's ever been, and we've seen him be pretty impressive in other years.
I'm excited twofold. I'm excited to see Dak Prescott be a top 5 quarterback again, and everyone be like, he'll never be a top 5 quarterback. And and then I'm excited to see Jaden Daniels and how that offense looks, because I think people are underrating him as a thrower, and I may be underrating him as a runner. It's just the end of his runs that make me nervous. But that's the quarterback that I'm excited to see. Running back, I'm still in the like really rookie centric. So it's still like somebody like Rasheen Ali that would make me happy to see get some run. Although you don't wish anything on Derrick Henry, but I think the ability to break long runs with speed and quickness is different than Derrick Henry breaking long runs with that inertia and the gain momentum and his size and strength. So that to me will be an interesting thing. Should be fun. I like the Gibbs answer. That's not a bad running back to be looking at. But again, for me, it's the Bijan. Can Bijan become that running back that we think he is in an offense that is not hamstrung by Arthur Smith? I like the JSN. I think that's a nice one. Addison is another wide receiver that I'm looking at with bated breath and hope. So those two, the year 2 wide receivers that we thought would hit that didn't. Tight end doesn't really matter. Whatever, you can have fun. It's not McBride, but tight end. I just want to see Laporta run it back, I guess, at this point. Like, let's go.
I'm excited in a sense, not in terms of my fantasy outcome. I want to see what happens with Eckler. I can't decide. Yeah. It feels like he's really undersold right now. But that's a dynasty thing. Also, just want to see how that works out for the kid. Wide receivers, Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas, just to say rookie centric. I think they're going to be really interesting to see how they work out this year. Tight ends, I always have a tight end on the back burner. I guess to see if Eric Orr gets any run in Cincinnati, that would really interest me, and see how Brock Bowers' rookie season. It's going to be really exciting. I'm hoping that you're right about the Pat Fairmouth boom year. Get back, remain in the top 12, maybe even do a bit better. It would excite me if that had another arc to it. Yeah. I'm a fan. NBA draft is on. Copa America is on. I don't know what those things are. So
I do know the NBA draft, but I don't know Copa America.
Zach always misses you.
I do.
He mentions it every time. Yeah.
Yep.
Good evening, good people. Thank you, Dave. I'm still debating trading for a running back, but I feel like I've brought this up for months now. Yeah, that's the way it gets. Worthy for ETN. Yeah, I would take ETN then.
Yeah, as much as we like Worthy, it's ETN is the play there. Although you hate to trade for a running back at this point in an off season, but ETN seems like a pretty solid one.
I think ETN gets more expensive once we get in season, so it's
probably true. Yeah.
Chat can handle rest. Good night, guys. I don't. Thank you, Anthony. There's a pig and a couple of cherries and a little bow and a house and a saxophone. And honestly, what is this? Like a nuclear symbol for nuclear energy or Mercedes-Benz? Maybe, I don't know. But I appreciate you, Anthony. Toronto Dave, 2 lemons. Thank you. What would you take for Gino on a rebuilder? I mean, I need a little more context. Is it a super flex, I assume, and you're a rebuilder? All right. I'm trying for more than a second, but I'd take a second if I forced. You could probably wait full season to get better, but yeah.
That's probably one where you pair Gino with something else to try to get into it first, because he's probably worth more than a second to a contender who is thin at quarterback, but you're probably not going to convince somebody that they need Geno Smith, because I'm not sure that Seattle is even convinced that they need Geno Smith. So to me, it's a try to pair him with something else or someone else to get a first, because I think a second is probably what you're going to get right now. And a second doesn't really help you as much as people think it does.
I mean, it's something to throw in a trade to get something else. That's what it's mostly. The fire trucks are there for all these hot takes. he figured you out, Zach.
My neighbor must be firing them off then, because
Mahomes or Allen in 4 points per passing touchdown. I currently have Mahomes and Allen. Owner is willing to add a small plus. He has Mahomes. Allen owner is willing to add to switch from Allen to Mahomes. I mean,
I'd rather have Allen, but
honestly, yeah, I was going to say that Mahomes is a little easier to trade. You will have to go away from Allen, apparently, but you can go get Herbert. You can go get Dak. You can go get any other quarterback and get a significant plus. And there are a few that, I don't mind downgraded to if it makes sense for me. Let's see your team. Mahomes, Kyler. Well, you already have Kyler. Carr gives most. Look competitive. So I might try. This is going to be a boom year for quarterback, though. Mahomes is nice. I don't think you need to. I definitely wouldn't switch for much. Maybe. Yeah, I don't see a big need to. I don't think you improve your team particularly. I mean, you can prefer one or the other, but no.
When I'm right now tearing down from somebody like Mahomes or Allen, it's not for it's not staying in.
You need to do something with your team, yeah.
Yeah. So
improve running back and through tight end or add a whole bunch of value in picks. But
I think I would rather go to the Dak Prescott manager and say, okay, I'll give you Mahomes for Dak and a first, or Dak and X running back, whatever, and do that rather than tiered down or tiered sideways to Josh Allen.
I think you might even get more than just first and some running
you
back.
might.
Yeah.
But I think
that's what I'm trying to find a way of phrasing. It's not that I would debate the plus, like whatever, second or third, add a wide receiver sleeper he likes, whatever. But the only reason I would trade someone that high up, like Chase, like Jefferson, like Laporta, maybe Kelsey, is because I need to do something else with my team. I either need the value to be more tradable in the future, with Mahomes. I don't know how that happens unless your entire roster's depleted and you just need to add draft capital so you can keep making other moves, trade to trade. Or, like Zach said, you're going to trade down to a Dak. You've already got Murray. Maybe a Herbert, but I'm on my own on that, but apparently it seems. And then you're going to add another position. Like that would be whoever it is, that would be the goal of trading Mahomes. Not to get a little plus, and also have Allen. It doesn't seem significant enough. Deontay will help Bryce. I mean, good players are going to help, but I think Bryce is going to need to be more than he's been. And Deontay can't make him good, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I think Deontay will do just fine.
He's the type of player that Bryce Young needs to be successful. Like, to me, it's the parallels between Bryce Young and Tua, like with Tua's first year, like it's incredible because the offense was geared toward trying to play downfield and take a long time for a play to develop, and neither Tua nor Bryce Young are the move the pocket, buy time, make a play. They're a lot better getting the ball out quickly. And then now Deontay Johnson is not adding Jalen Waddle, but it's a step in the right direction and a step towards a quicker offense. And a lot of Young's success last year was with Thielen, who, even though he's a shell of himself, he's more of a quick separator, and Deontay Johnson will give you a bunch of that. So like, it certainly is not going to hurt Bryce Young.
Genji, this is what, this is like the opposite of everyone saying that like top 5 players are great. Saying Bryce Young stinks is like saying Traylon Burks sucks. I mean, no one's disagreeing. That's the whole point. That's why he's interesting right now.
And he may stink, but also part of what he struggled with in college was pressure directly up the middle from the defensive line, and having one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL not helping that situation.
Doesn't help.
No.
Scribbles, I don't think any QB would have succeeded with what the Panthers did.
Yeah.
He doubt there last year, whatever. Great prospect, deserves a year where he has an O-line and stuff. Well, he's going to get it to throw to. Well, I don't know about all of that, but he's getting another year, obviously. We tend to write the book on quarterbacks a little early, and I'm normally for that because good players play. But quarterback especially, like I'm not too worried yet. I do expect a better window, if nothing else. Yeah. But it was rough, and we're guessing on narratives and what coaches are going to do and the chemistry of players. It's always going to be a little less certain than him just having a good rookie season, obviously. James, looking for a more grounded take on Nico, since a few people on Twitter have been hyping him up a ton, like Harmon, as an elite wide receiver. I don't... What do we mean by that? I think he's honestly more of a top 24 wide receiver than he was a top 12. But in looking into it, I did find I was a little low because I was like, let's just get out of Nico. I think the range of outcomes is fair at this point. I think he's more Pittman than he is Robert Woods. It's not just a one and done, but at the same time, I'm not expecting a top 12 Tyreek Hill upside. What are we calling elite? I think when Matt Harmon and I like the guy and he's very good at what he does, and I'm not throwing shade. But when he finds one that actually works, he just leans in, and that's honestly a good way of doing it.
Yeah.
But this is the Allen Robinson hype when most of us who did evaluation expected Robinson to be good, but so did his process, and then Robinson becomes the next Calvin Johnson. It's like, okay, can we just not? Can we just appreciate what we had? Yeah. And that's what that feels like. I mean, he should be fine. Probably a little underappreciated by me, but if he's getting elite hype, however we're defining that, yeah, definitely too much.
And that's one of
Tank and Nico all being fairly good. The outcome is probably going to be more, yeah, it's fine, than 3 or just 1 elite receiver and the other 2 are crap. It's probably more going to be most, pretty good.
Yeah, and that to me, James, is one of the most interesting facets of this game. Is it doesn't matter whether we're right or wrong on Nico Collins, because he's going to get that Matt Harmon bump, and so you're either going to be able to trade him away at a huge profit, so to speak, or you're going to be able to stay away from him and let somebody else pay up, and you can go make that move to go get Tank Dell, who's being depressed, or Diggs, who is now dust because he had 4 games where he saw 8, 9, 10, 11 targets, but didn't have catchable balls from Josh Allen at the end of the year. So like there's going to be a way to play this where it doesn't matter whether we're right or wrong on Nico Collins. And to Peter's point, like, we have probably been low on Nico Collins. I think the hype machine is now high on Nico Collins, and the answer is somewhere between wide receiver 18 and 10 to 18, like that's really where his range is. But if he's getting bumped up into the top, 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 or 12 because of the Matt Harmon influence on the hive mind of fantasy, that's when you just say, okay, I'll either trade him and recoup that value, or I won't buy into him. I'll let somebody else do that, and we'll pivot and take a player who's going to be somewhere in that same range but not have that same price tag.
The reason I've been a little lower is one, because I didn't expect it, and I'm bad at adjusting sometimes still to things that I didn't expect. Because Nico was hyped a couple years before that. Remember, as a rookie, everyone was like, "Oh, he's great." I was like, "I don't know about that." But then last year, his value was fine, and I didn't hate him, so I didn't quite get clapped by it. But it still feels a little bit of a bitter taste. But most people who are arguing for him want to use some form of split, which, based on how much Diggs, Tank Dell, and Nico played, you can actually do. But here's the thing: they're playing like a narrative game. They want to use counting stats when counting stats are better, and percentages when percentages are better. When an honest reading of the player is they got about a similar level of volume to on the field together, off the field together. But there's an edge to Tank Dell. He got slightly better target share per game. So you go to yards per route run, but no one will point out that if you're getting a butt-ton more air yards under the ball, then your yards per route run expectation is better. Honestly, performance stats, when you're just trying to understand what happened, they both did really well, which is why I was going too low on Nico, because I was too busy pointing out that he wasn't doing much better than Tank. They just both did pretty well with their volume. And if you want to throw an edge, Tank got a slight volume edge, but it's very tiny. Honestly, they just both did pretty well with the role they were given, and we should expect them to both continue to be pretty good at what they do. And Diggs to probably be the best scoring wide receiver on the team because he's Stephon Diggs. But we get tired of old things or things that we've seen before. And that's why I was getting low. When you spend so much time trying to correct someone's argument for a player, you end up not liking the argument for that player instead of realizing that the truth is he's fine. It's just it's just getting pushed up too high. And so you kind of move in a counter direction to balance it. And there's no need. I don't have to balance their bad take to have a reasonable one of my own. So yeah, I've tried to do some work on that, just to alliterate what I'm saying here. He did very well. He should we should expect him to keep being pretty good. Dame Overboard, I'm contending as probably a top 3 team, but I had nothing but dart throw. That's okay then. Don't worry about running back 2 spot, but I mean it's a point you can try and improve. Traded 25 and 26-6 for Zamir. That was not the way to go. Let me finish this. And a 25-4. Thoughts. Was being charged as a premium for running back. Well, there's a few off-the-top thoughts I have about trading for running back before we go to Zach and he tells you the actual answer. One, you don't have to trade for a running back until points are being scored and you can see who you need and who is actually going to do it. You don't have to guess. Running back is a trade for points when points are needed kind of a situation. But like we just said about ETN, occasionally now is a better time to buy a running back than not. And increasingly, because running back's been disappointing, there are more of those windows than usual over the last couple of years. It's going to change when we get a new great running back class, but we haven't quite got there yet. Second thing, it's a points position, which means I also, when I want to trade for a running back, even in the offseason like right now, I'm trading for points. I'm not guessing the future when I'm trading for points. I want Chase. I want Jefferson. I want CeeDee Lamb. I want someone less sexy, but I still know is pretty good. A.J. Brown. You know what I mean? That's wide receiver. Running back, I want McCaffrey. I want ETN. I want Aaron Jones. I know what he is. Derrick Henry's pretty solid. And so on and so forth. You know the names. Don't trade for a sleeper running back. Try to acquire as many as possible. That's what rostering running backs are. Now, is it bad to trade for Zamir White? No, I think the argument for him is pretty solid. He's a running back. He's a pretty solid running back. And he could well get the volume some people expect him to walk into, and you'll be fine. But you're trading for points. Why are you trading for value? The idea is that you get Zamir White now, he does that, and then he's worth more. I think you're risking what you need because you just like Zamir White. And that's fine, but don't frame it as a I need a running back 2 question. For yourself, not against me, I don't care. But for yourself, understand the bet you're making. You're looking for a value play with Zamir White when you do that. You paid 2 seconds to do it and got a 4th back. Zamir on the 4th. Yeah, whatever. And I don't do that with running backs. Typically, like I said, it's more possible now, but I don't think this is one I would make. And I don't think it's points per game play you were looking for. Najee Harris is out there. I know you don't like Najee Harris. No one does. But he gets pretty good volume, and he's going to score a running back 2 points, pretty fine. You can feel pretty confident in that. You're making a value play, which is also fine, but understand what you did. That's what I would say. Now, Zach, what's the actual answer?
And I'd have to see what the dart throws are at running back, because as a contending team, having dart throws on your roster at running back is not a death knell by any stretch. And I like you probably, and Genji says you overpaid. You probably overpaid like a little bit, but honestly, like 2 seconds, whatever.
It's one of those trades where it's too much, but you can't split. They're not actual currency. You can't split a quarter into 2 dimes and a nickel. You can't split a second into 2/3 and a 4th. It doesn't work that way. So.
Right. You don't get change back for your second.
Yeah.
But I get it. And I don't mind as a contender paying for the idea that if Zamir White takes over that backfield the way Kyron Williams did last year, then you've done a great thing. And he may, it's not like the Raiders backfield is just this,
locked in
battle zone. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
So he could end up being their main running back and being a solid running back too. And if you pay 2 seconds and end up winning the championship and having Zamir White be a running back 2 for you, then you won that trade. It doesn't matter that you overpaid a little. I probably there would be other directions that I would try to go first, because I think there is at least a little bit of hype on Zamir White, and I'd rather take dart throws with Jerome Ford and get 2 or 3 guys who could take over a backfield with Zach Moss and Chase Brown, that sort of thing. And yes, they're dart throws, but I'd rather do that. Or you probably could have paid 2 seconds and got somebody like Derrick Henry, and been a lot more confident that Derrick Henry is going to score points, than Zamir White's going to score points. So it's not a bad move.
Yeah,
but
neither of us are saying it's a bad trade, or
No.
the value isn't that far off for me to worry about. I'd be like, yeah, sure, cool.
Yeah.
Two very different approaches as well. I'm pointing out, and you can have your own approach. Yeah. Sorry, Zach. I keep meaning to interrupt.
No, that's fine. Like, and the same thing with like there are, and we just talked about this because we just did a Rate My League show, and there were a couple of teams, but like there was a team specifically with Jacobs and Aaron Jones and Mostert and Pacheco, like any of those players. If you could go make the same trade, I think I'm happier doing that than I am Zamir White. And again, not that Zamir White can have a season like those players.
Yeah.
He just hasn't, and they have.
Yeah, perfect. He is elite, let's laugh. You overpay. We mentioned that. And it seems that way, but I know Peter is not as high on him. Again, especially with running backs or players that are a little deeper, I pay.
Oh, you're talking
a little
Nico,
less.
Yeah.
I pay a little less attention. In general, because I honestly found it to be a net positive if you're paying a little less attention to the conversation. I want to be aware of who's spoken about. I want to know stats. I want to know players, don't get me wrong. But a lot of the talk just tends to lead you down narrative paths because it makes so much sense. So I don't always exactly know as much about Nico Collins or where the value is on him. But I do have a pretty, at this point, way too deep experience on it. And Nico feels like, or felt like, one of those players people were going to overhype. And then the conversation I heard about him kind of sold that into it. But when I look at his ADP and see the trades for him, it's not happening, but it is on Twitter. But to your point, if it's happening in your league, or it's starting to happen more because really good evaluators who know what they're talking about and are very popular are starting to push it, then you should look for that window for sure. No, how can I? You don't trade Nico for Tank. You don't trade Tank for Nico. You're trying to add something to either and go get a player up. That's the way out of them. Or you're just pretty happy to have a player who did really well in whatever career year last year. If forced, I'm happy to have Tank than Nico, but that's not a reflection of the fact that Nico didn't do very well and should be expected to continue to be pretty good, to be fair. And that's a hump I'm trying to get over. Yeah. Would you all add anything to Neighbors to get May? No, I would sell May for Neighbors so fast. Like I break my finger. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
That's not the way I would go. Like you say your second QB is shaky. If you add May, your second QB is still shaky, but you got rid of Neighbors.
Yeah. May goes behind Neighbors in drafts. Not that it's always that simple, but that's why I
should.
Yeah. Neighbors clears, yes. Tony Perez, 12 team Superflex PPR non-tight end premium start 10. Lamar Purdy, Levis, Bashawn Gibbs, A-Chain, Walker, pretty heavy running back room. Monty, Irvin, like them all. Hill, Adams, Olave, Metcalf, Worthy, like your wide receivers too, to a point. Dotson, McMillan, that's fine. Kyle Pitts, Chig, and Schultz. Any advice for moves to make? I mean, always. QB2 needs work. First thing that stands out to me, just thinking in a vacuum, it's a super flex. It's fine. You got Purdy and Levis, who probably startable at some point, but I think is upside Tannehill, and I think his hype grows every now and again, depending on what's doing in your league. First player I think of is Dak. Might be because Zach just mentioned it, but he's also just been a go-to the last couple of years. Herbert's in a low window if you want to think Dynasty, and should have lower expectations, but I have higher expectations for him than Levis. So if I can add a first to those two, even get Herbert to that Dynasty, if thinking more building, I don't think you necessarily have to think building, though. So Dak or Kyler Murray might be a better way for you to go. But all of these are just wishes and horses and courses. It depends what the teams in your league are structured like. Goes looking for what could strengthen one of your starters on a team that you could help out with their value or a different position that you have extra strength at, like running back here, and then try and tweak your roster that way because you look competitive for next year. So I'm not thinking pure building. So there's less of those moves that come to mind. And instead, I want to go look at my roster to see where someone else is weak and I have a little bit running back depth, maybe a little bit wide receiver depth, depending on how their lineup shakes up with mine. And just tweak your starting 9 or starting 11 or whatever it is to get players you would prefer to start over the one that you have. That would be the way I would approach finding moves rather than just I'm buying all the Brock Purdy this year or whatever it is. I know a lot of Dynasty players play that way. A lot of content shakes out that way. I have to apologize. It's just not the way I either think about Dynasty or try to offer advice because I think most of it doesn't work. Or people end up overpaying for the player they were told to go get. I just don't think it's the best way of trying to help or just to play Dynasty. So that's the best I can do off the top of my head. Without talking even longer than this, because I talked too long. And we should give Zach some room, because he's normally got a better idea.
Well, so looking at this specific team, Tony, I would be trying to use Kenneth Walker and Dotson, Dotson's got a little bit of hype. Again, they're talking, though, we're third-year breakout. He's got a quarterback now, and I would be trying to take those two players and try to tier up at one of those two positions. So either add Dotson and Walker and try to get a better running back than Walker, or add Dotson and Walker and try to get a better receiver than Dotson. And I think you can, make either of those moves, and it gives you quite a bit of flexibility because you have two entire positions that you can make a run at with these two players. Do a 2-for-1, get a little bit better in terms of your starting lineup where you're starting 10. So you've got 2 quarterbacks, you've got 3 starting running backs right now, you've got 4 wide receivers. So now what are we at? 9, and then a tight end. So like you really you're adding.
You're just tweaking.
Yeah. So this
I think ETN will work with. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's a really solid build, but that's the type of move, Peter, that I would be making with Tony's team, is to try to get into one of those, either a running back that's the tier up from Kenneth Walker. So, you might be able to get into that ETN range with Walker and Dotson, because people still hold Walker as like a top 12 to 14 running back right now.
No,
and to me,
he's
not.
I looked at the roster and saw the QB2 spot, but you looked at the running backs and noticed someone who's a little overvalued. And maybe if we had a wide receiver, I think that's smart to go about it. And again, that I'm saying buy ETN, but I find him often in an interesting window. And if you want to go Zach's route, I think ETN would help your team out a lot, both points per game and value at the running back 3 spot. It would be the running back 3. That's how deep. That's why I didn't go to running back. Your running back's pretty good. But Zach's right. Walker plus, I don't know, Dotson or a second or something in that range could definitely at least go part way to get an ETN, and your overall roster would be good. Not necessarily your starting 10, because I don't know I'd start ETN over Gibbs week 1. But week 3, week 4, when you're streaming a little bit, ETN's definitely a better guy to fit into that lineup than Walker, to Zach's point. And so that little plus would definitely help improve your roster somewhere else. But yeah, it's interesting the way you look for the right player, and I was looking for the right position to improve. Not that it means anything. I just like noticing stuff like that. In a 14-team, 2 tight end Superflex league, have a stacked wide receiver room. No, you don't. It starts with London. That's not stacked. That's not Jefferson.
He wrote it backwards. It's okay. Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, Olave, and London. So you just wrote it backwards.
Okay. Best I could do for you is Olave, Wilson, Harrison, London. I don't think it's stacked for 24, put it that way. I think it's good. A lot of value there. No one will give up tight ends. Went for cheap, like Pat Fairmouth. Hey, but yeah. But do once for that dude's off his rocker. What do I do? I have none, and what do I want to contend? Well, again, my main advice is go look at rosters, see someone who might have or might feel comfortable trading a tight end. Most people undervalue tight ends, but that doesn't mean they're going to. So mostly I go looking for teams that maybe might, and they might not, but they might feel like they could spare Ingram. They might feel like they could spare, I don't know, who's some of my other tight ends? I'm like Jake Ferguson, I guess, if you're just really looking for a potential breakout, pretty solid last year kind of a guy. It's a downgrade from the name I mentioned before. Or who drafted Brock Bowers? Are they building, and that's why they took a young tight end pretty early in the draft? And you might be able to help them out because you got a lot of value here, and you could add at the position that you're weaker. So that's why I advocate for going for look at rosters. There are names I can throw out that I prefer. I mean, everyone's got there's a really strong middle class right now. I really just have the three names. It's Sam Laporta, Mark Andrews, and Travis Kelce, and then a whole bunch of really interesting players. And the way I'm playing it is I am less structured in who I think's fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. But I really like Kittle in that particular pack. And I think Kittle is one of the guys I often go knocking on their door first if their roster seems like I can work with it. You have London, and I'm not saying you have to trade London. Like, none of these are meant to be prescriptive. They're just kind of how I go about thinking about it, so you can find a better move for yourself. London's really hyped. He's been good. He's on an offense people expect a lot more from this season, and all of that is true and accurate and good. But there's some maybe in there. There's a maybe, and he hasn't yet been top 12. So can I get a little value for the maybe and fair value for London, add to my tight end room? And if you're balancing the value, that means you get a tight end and you improve your value at the same time. Now, that might not happen. You might have to go with Marvin Harrison. I would try not to until we see him play, but whatever. Wilson or Olave. But that's the name that stands out to me on your team in terms of there's a little maybe there where I can, if I get London's value, then I can have a tight end and add to the back of my value with some sort of draft pick instead of a player. And I think that would be a good play right now. That's kind of how I think about it. But who to target? I go looking at the rosters to see who's available. But Kittle stands out to me just in general.
Well, but it's a two tight end league. So if you're in that two tight end league and the tight ends are being like clutched to the bosom, like they don't want to part with tight ends, and like don't pay a first, like figure out like cheap tight ends, get tight ends that are like back end, like go get Hunter Henry, go get
Greg
Dulcich. Yeah.
Dulcich. Jake Ferguson. I mentioned him before.
I mean, even Zach Ertz
on that list for me.
Like Taysom Hill may play some tight end this year, and
no one's excited about David Njoku anymore, right? But he's
I mean, he was pretty good last year, but but I would be attacking the other positions that people aren't looking at. If everybody in your league is like tight ends are super valuable, there's got to be an undervalued position. So go get good at that. Go get your positional advantage in multiple starting spots there, and make up for what you're giving up at tight end. So pay up at another position that doesn't cost as much to get more points, and do that, and just make up, because you're not. I think that the thing that gets missed in a lot of fantasy is you're not necessarily making up your points like tight end versus tight end versus tight end, because
think about it as a flex.
Your points are aggregate. So like you can win at the tight end position. And in a two tight end league, it's nice to win at the tight end position because everyone is starting two. But if you can go win at other positions by more than you're losing at the tight end position, you can make that up. And so that's how I would try to attack it. I would try to figure out what's being undervalued and how I could get a positional advantage at those positions that are being undervalued if I can't get into tight end.
See, it's awkward, and it's why I don't think this is how I play kind of stuff helps, because normally tight end is a little undervalued, and I love trying to take advantage of it. It's why I know and like tight ends pretty well. But, and it's usually pretty easy to figure out. Like Zach says, find out what's being undervalued, because there's only so much to go around. You have to rank someone behind those tight ends that would be ahead. Now, that doesn't always eke out exactly in trade, but you probably know, like, I have trouble getting value out of running backs or my quarterbacks or my wide receivers that are the top 5. You probably know that just from experience in the league, and those kind of things tend to give you a clue about where that value is popping out at. If you're overvaluing tight end, some people just try to elevate everyone to the top 10, especially if they're on their roster, but they're just impossible to trade with. Just leave them alone. But normally, there'll be some value eking out somewhere else, whether it's running back, quarterback 2s, or even those slightly deeper wide receivers. And you'll know where it is just from thinking of it like that. Like what's getting a little undervalued because of these tight ends. And that's another way of going about it. Attack those. You don't have to. That's what streaming tight end was. That was the default. You just found a tight end, or you're trying a couple to try and score 7 points a week while everyone else is chasing Rob Gronkowski, and you go pummel the other positions. And that's kind of the Dynasty version, what Zach's telling you there to do, I think. Still fire trucks.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just coming out of a rebuild. That's okay. Take it slow. You don't want to get it back. You don't want to go backwards. And tight end isn't the position you should destabilize yourself for, especially if it's being valued. I got Bryce at the 201. Seems pretty solid. Wait, in a startup draft, that's bad.
Rookie draft. I think it's a rookie pick. Like traded the 201 for Bryce. I think
that's solid.
There's no way somebody's taking him in a startup unless it's like a 42 team league at the 201.
Feels yuck trading for a running back, and feels yuck trading away Worthy. And you don't have to. Just play your feels if you want. But the reason you keep asking is you know it's a pretty good idea. You just don't want to do it. So don't do it. It's fine. And then when Xavier Worthy is actually the next Tyreek, no. But you know, when he's pretty good, you'll be able to say, see, I knew. And we'll be like, yeah, you were right again, Genji. Because we hated Xavier Worthy. Or something. This is like Brees or Bajan. Yeah.
I assume he's just talking about you and me.
Yeah. Which one's which? That's you're a little younger. You can be Bajan Robinson. It's fine. If there is any higher end running back that I feel like is worth targeting as a buy low, it is ETN. Yeah. He's the one that stood out to me over the last few weeks. Where are you guys? I heard a good argument for Jamal Williams, but that was more buying maybe. And I went and looked, but I just can't find it in myself to make those kind of running back trades. But yeah, I heard a pretty good injury argument because that injury tends to take an extra year, and he did get the volume all last year, and I was a little confused by why it wasn't paying off. And that could well just be he was getting volume because he's good, but he's still just a little banged up. But that's a typical Dynasty thing. And with running backs, like I literally just got through doing, I'm not paying for what I think is true if I'm looking for points, and if I'm trading a running back, I'm usually looking for points. But Williams isn't a bad one if you do go in for those sort of trades. Where are you guys on Ayuk? I mean, I feel like I stayed right here with Ayuk, and he's one of the players that everyone's just zigzagged past me so many times that I'm a little dizzy somehow just watching everyone go past, like a tennis match on high speed. I think it's pretty good. Top 24 floor. He has top 12 stretches, even in a season. I don't think he's ever going to be someone like a Jefferson, a Chase, a Diggs, someone who has that consistent top 12 upside, like throughout a season. But he is clearly a very talented player, and he has that on a week-to-week basis. So I feel like pretty good about it. That's kind of what I've been saying about Ayuk since his rookie season. Zach, are you a little higher, a little lower? Does that sound fine?
Well, and I think Frank's talking about him like potentially being traded, potentially holding out, all that stuff. But like, I really have a hard time speculating about
I just don't.
all of the,
it's so much easier.
yeah,
Been
all
like,
of the machinations that we don't have any idea about. That like it's great that like people think they know, and like CBS is reporting today that Ayuk had a good meeting with San Francisco. But what does a good meeting mean? And who leaked that to the media?
who's
Was it
agent, right?
was it Ayuk's agent? Was it San Francisco? Like what? So like we just
I think it's great for players because the wide receivers moving is more of a real thing now, because it has happened a little bit more. But honestly, yeah, I'm with Zach. Like, it just makes me dizzy again trying to think about it. And normally we don't get it right. And if you get it right, there may have been a opportunity, but mostly just know it when it happens and root for the player to get all the money.
So Frank, the way that I play situations like this is I figure out the temperature of most of the people talking about it. So if most people are afraid of Ayuk, then I'll go buy. If most people are like, "Oh, this is not a big deal," well, then
maybe it is.
Yeah, we'll back off, or I'll sell and try to recoup big value. But Ayuk was fantastic last year. If he's in that offense in San Francisco, he should be great again. Like I don't see any reason why I would be afraid of him if he's still there, and I don't know anything other than he's going to be there right now. I don't have any insider information, and I think most of the insiders don't have insider information until it happens, and they just get it quicker than everybody else.
I mean, it seems pretty like Ayuk doesn't know what's going to happen because he doesn't know what's going to happen yet. So like, how can anyone else save yourself a lot of headache?
Oh, there you go. They're going to pay him.
Okay, probably. Everyone is a lead. Yep. Especially when they're on your roster. Traded Jefferson for Drake London, a 25 first, 26 first. Plan on taking this year 10-team best ball start 11 super flex 0.5 tight end premium.
I mean, that's
Jefferson for London and 2 first. The value's there, and I would never do it.
Yeah.
No. I'm just going to have Jefferson. Unless you're building, that trade makes no sense to me. And the reason I would do it is because then I can go trade London, then I can trade those picks at different points. I'm trying to pile up value with trades on trades.
The interesting thing is London could take a little bit of a jump this year, but I don't think that there's a really interesting thing happening with wide receiver right now, where we've had so many good wide receivers come in since 2019.
Yep.
The top 10 wide receivers right now: Justin Jefferson was 2020, CeeDee Lamb was 2020, Jamar Chase was 2021, Amon-Ra St. Brown was 2021. Marvin Harrison was this year. Garrett Wilson was 22. AJ Brown was 2019. Puka Nacua was 22. Tyreek Hill is the one guy in the top 10 that is, not in the last 5 drafts.
That's because Diggs was 13th.
Yeah, but Malik Neighbors was this year. Olave and London were 22. So like, it's wild, but we've got so many young, and then Odunze and Waddle. So like, you're 14 deep, and the only player who is in that hasn't been drafted in the last 5 years is Tyreek Hill. So like, there's not a lot of upward mobility for London. Even if he has a great year, I don't think he's passing many of those players. Like, AJ Brown would have to fall on his face. Puka Nacua would have to just completely disappear. And then maybe London moves up like 3 spots. So like,
and the key point is they don't fall back. London has to go up. And that's the way it's pitched to you. But that's not what it's a delayed 2014. We never got another 2014 class, although I personally think like 21 was probably the closest we've had to it. But all of those combined, it's just delayed 2014. So we know, and the reason I might feel a little flippant, or we've been here before. We've had great wide receivers come in, so everyone's trying to guess who the next great wide receiver is. But the thing is, the top 12 is usually populated by guys 25 and older. In fact, 27 and older. So if we've just had a series of below 25 years, what it means is they're going to get older and their age is going to rise again. Who's next? No one. You just missed the revolution where the wide receivers changed over, or not missed. Maybe you've got all those. You've got Jefferson, you got all those guys too. But it's not who's next. It's here is the new era. Those guys Zach just mentioned. I think Waddle's been there before as well, so he's worth keeping an eye on because everyone thinks he's not. He's all news now, but he was in the top 12 in like his rookie season. And that wouldn't be a breakout. He'd just be returning to it, which players do pretty consistently. They repeat and return a lot more than they break out into the top 12. So could Leonard be good? Sure. Could he be top 12? Absolutely. But why are you expecting it? Passing volume? That would mean he would have a better year, not that those are the 12 young wide receivers suddenly suck. You know what I mean? It gets presented to us in the opposite direction because it makes good content. Who is the next? Who is the buy for? Who's the wide receiver to go buy? And it's the wrong question if you're just trying to think about Dynasty. I think that's me. But.
It's so wild. There are 2 wide receivers above the age of 26 in the top 24 in Dynasty right now.
It's bizarre. Well, it's not bizarre. It happened. Like I said, there's a cyclical nature to
but it's awesome. We're in
it's been a great era. Yeah. It's like quarterback, especially with the low scoring last year. I mean, we're in the best quarterback era that I've seen, even with last year being like one of the lowest scoring years. The number of good quarterbacks scoring that much difference-making points is kind of. It's that Peyton Manning era draft class level different. Sorry, I keep talking over you, but you're right. Who's elite, DK or Nico, or both or neither? And DK's got more access to it, I think, just because he's more high variance, and that's always going to give you that spike potential on a week-to-week basis, especially. So I'd probably say Nico, but it depends what you mean by elite. Again, these words that are fun to say and tell me that you like or don't like a player. I like all the players, so I prefer to define it. I don't think either have going to finish the year consistently in the top 12, but both of them have done it. DK's a little undervalued right now, so I'd go for DK. That's the way I would think about it.
Yeah, and I don't think either of them are elite, but I think they're both like, wow, you said it. They're both really good. I think the situation plus the talent is in Nico's favor.
That's true.
So,
yeah. I was thinking something like that when I said it. I was like, am I really saying DK's got the variance right now? Surely that's Nico. He just did it. Yeah, you could go either way. And so I won't rant a value. Holy L at Richard Davis. Traded Average Pearsall on a 27-second for Tua, Hill, and Cup. I prefer your side. I want Tua and Hill and Cup overall. That 10-team Superflex start, 12-team Superflex point type fight. Same league. And my other QBs are Kyler and Purdy. Yeah, same team. Right. Yeah, I don't mind selling Richardson right now just to get out of the variance. And Tua is a very solid sideways. Not the upside, but definitely a higher floor. And he's still got perfectly fine upside. And Hill and Cup easily make up for Pearsall's range of outcomes in a second.
You don't think Pearsall in the second is more than... I assume that's Tyreek Hill.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. If that's Tyreek Hill, I like it.
Yeah.
If it's Taysom, not so much. Genji's just having fun with the elite.
I love it, Genji. I love it.
Nico has similar value to Tua in Superflex rankings on Keep Trade Cut, which seems kind of silly. That's also just a flaw with rankings. And yes, especially if you're going by ADP or by rankings, quarterback is horrendously underranked, especially on Keep Trade Cut. When it comes to Superflex, it really undersells a quarterback position. That's a trend I mentioned a while ago, and I just got hammered for it on Twitter about as if I. Anyway, but yeah, quarterback's really underranked in there.
You could just take the whiteout pen and white out from Nico all the way to on, and just have keep trade cut, which seems kind of silly.
I have 5 firsts in next year's draft. That's pretty good. I hope you like running backs. Definitely in a rebuild, but have some nice young talent. And Caleb McCarthy, Brooke, that makes sense, though. You've got players who are maturing this season. Then you're going to go into a draft, hopefully with knowing a lot about which ones are hitting. And with all this draft capital, and you get to roll that over, maybe make some of the picks, maybe trade some of them, maybe sell on some of the ones who disappointed. For anyone who thinks it's whatever narrative they'll do better on year 2 for sure. Yeah, that's solid. I don't see a question there. How would you manage those picks? I answered it. That's how I'd manage it. I'd keep them. Your team's not built enough for me to be thinking, what can I pair with these young players to go get proven players? Instead, I'd let the season play out a little bit. I mean, look for those moves, I guess.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is Logan, your moves are going to be dictated by what happens with this season and who is. There are going to be teams in your league that are looking to sell out, and they may be looking to sell out to the upper tier teams. But if you have picks, they will sell out to you too. And oftentimes teams will trade like veteran players who are still young enough that you would want them on your roster for picks, because picks are shiny and we're going to make a first round pick. And so in season, when teams start to get out of contention, those have the promise of the future. And so you may end up being able to make some really nice moves over the course of the season with teams that are kind of your peers, because I don't think your team is going to be a contender this year, but you have potential to, and I don't know that I would move all of the picks, but I would definitely be open to adding. I mean, look at, some of these teams, and if they've got players that they think are hurting them, players that are scoring points, but you see them as players that could be pieces on your team going forward as you rebuild, make those moves. So you don't necessarily have to hang on to them, those picks. And also, the further you go in the season, the more idea you have of where those picks are going to be. So you can kind of pick and choose. Yeah.
What I was going to say is it's week 4 for you, Logan. Like week 4, you have a pretty good sense of the way it's going for most rookies. Not 100%, but pretty good idea. And so do most teams. They start reevaluating, am I competing? Am I not? And you can start to make some moves from there. But that's what I would do with my picks. I'd wait to week 4 and see what's what. Thought process is Jefferson is going to score 16 to 8 points per game. London is going to score 12 to 16. That's a big ass range right there, but sure. So pick up the extra 2 firsts for a tanking team. The thing is, those 2 extra points are really significant. And this is what value over baseline encourages you to think about. There's basically 500 points above what an average team should score if they're starting 9 to 11, however many starters you have, of the 132 highest scorers. And Jefferson has access to 2 points a week for 17 weeks of them, which is a huge chunk. Those 500 points come from relatively few players, and Jefferson is one. London's 12 to 16 range of outcomes does give you a little bit value of a baseline, but a much smaller chunk of the extra 500 points we're actually all competing for. So what you've essentially done is given away a significant percentage of your chances to beat other people in the league. That's what that works out to. Even though the numbers are pretty close, those 2 points are really significant. And I'm using your numbers, but it varies depending on what the exact scoring is. And that's the way I think about it. And I think, Zach, something similar, that Jefferson's it's that difference-making scoring.
Yeah.
It's like Breece Hall and Christian McCaffrey. Points per game is pretty close, but you win more if you have Christian McCaffrey, because he scores over that baseline, higher over that baseline week to week, and it adds up.
Like if I were to break down Justin Jefferson, I would do it very similarly to the way I would approach a Mahomes or a Josh Allen,
Yeah.
where like I want to get I would probably like it would be something where like I would do Jefferson for another elite-ish asset and like Jaden Daniels and like a pick where like you've got the potential to get like multiple difference makers where like what Peter's saying is London is not a difference maker.
And I think his range of outcomes is actually more between 10 and 14 than 12 and 16.
Yeah, like but regardless, like London is not a difference maker. Even if you give him the 16 points a game, that is not difference making points
over there.
And he's not going to gain enough value for you to be able to trade him to recoup Justin Jefferson when you're ready to go make your move. And I also think that people we throw around tanking a lot. If you have Justin Jefferson, you're not tanking. Like you're just not. Go make moves where you like trade your pick and go get the pick of the team that's tanking. But like you're not going to get, you have such a positional advantage with Jefferson. And if you're going to trade Jefferson, you got to get just an absolute haul back. And I, although if you put it into a trade calculator, London and 2 firsts for Jefferson is probably close. In reality, it's not because of the difference making. Like he gives you a positional advantage that there are only about 6 players in the league that give you that.
And positional advantage is known and thrown out, but it took me forever to figure that out. That why is it so exactly that? And is the 500 points over baseline every year total available is relatively consistent. And I'm talking all the way back to 2008. I asked Adam Harstead a question on Twitter, and I don't know, I phrased it wrong. He seemed to think, like he always does, because I am an idiot, and I don't know he got it. So I want to look for myself, and even though, more points are being scored this year or that year, and points scoring is going up, over baseline, because the whole thing is going up, relatively consistent between like 504 and 586 points. There's relatively little difference-making points being scored every year. So those, again, 2 points is a huge chunk, a huge percentage chunk of what we need to actually outcompete each other. And that's assuming we get to baseline, which is a Drake London, that you've got a baseline player. Awesome. Now we need those points over baseline. And Jefferson is one of the few that actually give you access to it. And he's actually a really significant chunk of that assumed 500 points next year. Whereas London, especially where it's a maybe he gets back to baseline because they're just more maybes. That's the thing. And getting to the place where he scores as much of a percentage of that 500 points for your team as opposed to it going to some other team through some other player is much lower. And so you have less pop every week. It's not that you don't. If you just reduce everyone's points down to like 50 points a week instead of 150, that's where we're at. And you have to get to 100 points before your points start scoring. And London helps you get to 100 points, but he doesn't peak you above where you're actually competing to win. If you know what I mean? Like, we need baseline players, but those few players will actually push you over the edge. And it changes year to year, yada, yada, yada. But I think it's a better way of thinking of it. And it explains why 16, this range, is drastically different to some idiot like.
Would you rather make that move for Marvin Harrison or Neighbors plus the picks than you would for London? This is just me trying to,
because you're playing for something different. You're not paying for the maybe of London having a better breakout season. It's a first-year player who's got more years and also probably a similar range of outcomes, but we actually don't know as well. He could have a strong rookie season, and suddenly it looks like he's got a Jefferson range of outcome, and then you've got that value to play with. But it's context-based. London averaging 10 points per game. Yeah, I think it's 10 to 14 would be a fairer medium, but I'm not going to argue that. It's fine. I think the idea of that extra 500 points after everyone gets to baseline is the way to think about it. Jefferson is a 26 points per game type of guy.
He's probably like 20, 21, 22. Like, let's not get crazy.
I'd argue 23.2, but that's fine. Richard Davis.
Got the spreadsheet going.
Also in the best ball league that I'm tanking, thinking of trading Jacobs plus second-ish for Pickens. I mean, you can, obviously. Pickens is a really interesting player with a lot of upside. What I would say is if I'm building, I'm trying to avoid risk. I want my team to definitely be better next year, right? Whereas if you trade for Pickens and it just doesn't work out or he gets injured, your team is definitely not better. So you're opening yourself up to that range of outcomes. Now, Jacobs plus a second is a very fair trade for Pickens. I would say that, and I'd probably do that. But I think you're thinking about who to trade for a little bit off. That's what I'm saying.
Do you like the second one better, the Jacobs and McCarthy for Pickens in a first?
Yeah. Because the first it secures some of that risk variance to me. Because the first is not going to suddenly be a second next year if you do nothing else. Whereas Pickens good, But I even like the Jacobs plus a second-ish. I think the trade was fine. I just wanted to comment on if I'm tanking, what I'm trying to do is avoid risk rather than acquire.
Right. You'd rather have picks. Picks don't score points and they don't lose value.
Well, I'd rather have Pickens in this instance as well. It's just a way of thinking about it. Jacobs in a second for Pickens. Yeah. Jefferson scored 20 points per game last year, which
but he didn't have. So he didn't have Cousins. He had Cousins for 8 games, and he was hurt for Jefferson was hurt for some of those.
Okay.
And Jefferson is gonna Peter. Stop me before I give the wide receivers control the volume that they get, but that's Jefferson they're going to throw to Jefferson. It didn't matter last year that they were a combination of Dobbs and I don't even remember the guy who was bagging groceries who ended up finishing that year. But Jefferson is going to be fine.
Jefferson's fine because he's very, very good.
Yeah,
even if it's not that complicated.
Even if it's Sam Darnold throwing to him, he's going to be absolutely fine. He'll be Justin Jefferson. The Vikings may be just dog manure, but he'll be Justin Jefferson.
He could even have a bad year, and then everyone forgets that Cooper Kupp can finish in the top 5, and everyone like me trades for him, and then he bounces back up to be the Dynasty wide receiver 1. Everyone's like, wow, no one saw this coming, and a few of us are like, he literally did this 2 years ago. Just a memory helps. I would argue a few points here, Richard. You're picking 1 points per game year out for Jefferson, and points per game, depending on how many games he played, and comparing that to a London. Why don't we choose the lowest points per game London's ever put out? Want to compare that to 20 points per game? I think it would be less, right? Am I wrong on that? You're picking that one's bad number and this one's good number, and then guessing that I don't see how this offense can work. I simplify that by I don't see how any of it's going to work, and neither an NFL coach nor an expert. And every time I've tried or seen people try to do that, some are great at it. There is a reason Evan Silva rose to the top of this industry is because he works his butt off and actually gets a lot of that shit right. I don't know how, but I do know I'm never going to be Evan Silva good at that, right? So if Evan Silva says something, I tend to listen about that particular subject. But for myself, I simplify. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know Cooper Kupp and other players like him that have had that feeling. If they have a down year, which he could next year, they then have another good year because good players tend to repeat previous performances. So what Zach, and it's not positional based. So what Zach was just saying about Dak Prescott. Every now and again, he pops up again in the top 5 and everyone's like, wow, who could have seen that? He literally did that 2 years ago. All you got to do is know that players that do that can always do that again. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they fall off and they age out and they go away. But that happens a lot less than players that we think have that ceiling because passing volume and coaching narratives, unless you're Evan Silva, and so on and so forth, work out. those work out at a lot lower rate and happen. Those not working out happen at a lot higher rate than a good player suddenly being as good as they were previously. That happens fairly often, most years. We're actually in a breakout wide receiver year, breakout tight end year, and we're just exiting a low-scoring QB year. It should be a pretty hefty year for the known good, proven players to pop a little bit again this year, especially ones that missed time and weren't quite as good last year. How's that going to happen for Jefferson in that offense? Good point. I have no idea. But I'll trust Evan Silva when he rags on it a little bit, but all I can say is I don't know how most of it works out that way. I've heard way too many good narratives and believed in them, and they don't work out. And once you're talking about a story, I have no way of evaluating that story from the past. And whereas if you set identifiers, that's my history thing, and then we actually see how many times does a player like Jefferson, who scores this points on average to this point in the season, continue to be good for the next 5 years? The answer is most of the time. Most of the time, they continue to be good on the whole. You might have to wait for a day or two. That's all I know. I'm not saying it's not going to be a bad year next year. I'm saying it's worth not worrying about it for me. Also, fully understand London doesn't have the high range of outcome games, like he ain't touching 30 ever. And it's a weird thing about range of outcomes. I kind of use it as a default to get out of jail free. I mean, every outcome's kind of in every player's range of outcomes in a certain way. Like London can have a higher ceiling than I'm giving him credit for, but I think reasonable, most often is slightly lower than 16. But he could definitely get there. He was hurt. That first month he was near 26 points per game.
And then Cousins got hurt too. Like Cousins played 8 games last year, and then it was Dobbs, Nick Mullins, and Jaron Hall. So it's not
I'm mostly talking about the reasoning I've taught myself not to do, because it's perfectly viable and reasonable. I'm not saying he's wrong, but these are the things I've noticed. Like when you're comparing one person's high number to another person's low number, like I'm trying to get to a result here. And that's probably the bad way of going about it. Not that it couldn't be true or end up being. Appreciate your input. Love hearing the feedback. Just thoughts. To be clear on this, Dame, I'm just another Dynasty player. You are allowed to do anything you want. Yeah, it's free country mostly. Fair, but Q player is going to play a massive downgrade. Yeah, he could have a bad year, but what if who's London's quarterback? Just so I'm not getting that wrong.
Cousins. In theory, if he's healthy.
There's a good chance that the reason Cousins blew up when he went to Minnesota was having Thielen, Diggs, and Justin Jefferson. If Cousins is what he was with Washington, do you remember what he was known for? 4 interceptions a game days.
I was going to say handing off to
that's
Alfred
what he
Morris.
Was known for. I'm not trying to throw shade on Cousins. I think he's been pretty good. I think he had a lot to do with that because QB matters. But I mean, if we're narrativizing the other direction, is always also possible. What if Cousins isn't quite Cousins without Thielen, without Diggs, without Jefferson, back to back to back, and at the same time for 2 of them at a time, But yeah, it's perfectly reasonable narrative, to be clear here, Richard. I'm just trying to articulate why I avoid trying to make decisions based off it. But yeah, that could definitely all be true. It's very well reasoned. You should have waited for the Alexander Madison week 1 12 carry game to buy Zamir. That's fair. Also built teams like Murray, Purdy, Tua, Bajon, Jacobs, ETN. While Lamb, Hill, Lamb, Chase, AJ Brown, Cup, Rice, Dell, Andrews, Pitts plus 225 first and 426 first. Other team I built is that's pretty good too. Nice. Hey, fantasy cares. Alan Hurts. I like this. That's a different kind of waving hand as well. You don't get access to that emoji on any account. Another team. That's a shame. Just take bets with insulation built in. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it's why I moved JJ. It's a risk, but At worst, I get a player I can flip. Now, at worst, you get a player you can't flip. Just to be clear, you have 2 firsts at worst. That's pretty good. But yeah, London should be fine at least. Yeah. London is a risk in that trade. The first insulate it a little bit, but you also lose Jefferson. Yeah. And Neighbors fell to 106 in my league. May and Daniels went ahead of him, needed a QB. Planning on taking one, but couldn't pass on the value of Neighbors for McCarthy. Yeah, I agree.
Oh, I'd rather have Neighbors, yeah.
Unfortunately, sometimes they just make you take a good player that you don't need that position. I mean, it happens. It's fine. What a steal for Neighbors. Yeah. Took him at 103 in 2 leagues. I haven't seen him fall anywhere past 3.
I could see him 4 because I could see
Maybe.
I could see Williams and Daniels and Harrison.
That would be fair.
And then Neighbors. But like it depends on what people think of Williams and Daniels. But.
Yep. Agreed, but my QB spot still needs work. We'll figure it out.
Get Will Levis. I like that.
But I got to take best player available, especially in a rookie draft. Just take a risk. Yeah. Or trade down, I guess, is the other
draft
argument.
For value, trade for need, Russ says in my ear.
Yep. I got it engraved in the back of my skull from Russ, I think. Get Will Levis. Yeah. Purdy's probably easy to get and been in the top 12 at least. Philip J. Fry, give 25 first, not mine. Receive Kyler.
Yes.
It's 1 QB. But yeah. I mean Goff, Baker. I mean, you don't need him.
I mean, I'd rather have Kyler than Goff, but yeah, you don't necessarily need him.
I want Kyler, and the first is okay in a 1 QB for that level of upside, but it feels like you can do better with your value. That's what I'm going to say. You could probably do more that definitely helps your team. I mean, Kyler helps your team, but you know what I mean? The access to those 500 points in a 1 QB, Kyler is not giving you as significant a percentage of that as I would prefer.
See if you can get him for Baker and a pick instead of...
Yeah, that like if you could trade one of the QBs in there, Baker in a second or something. But yeah, probably not. Drake London, such a scam. That's all I'm saying. Stacked wide receiver room and starts with Drake London. You do need players that can get you there, to be fair, and he's one. Philip J. Fry, add 25 second plus or not for McLaurin. Sure. I mean, yeah, I'd probably rather have McLaurin, unless that 25 second turns out to be a running back I like a lot, but I've got a year to figure that out.
12 team PPR 0.75 tight end premium. Kyle Lamar Watson seems to be shot. Puka DJ. But I don't. Are you starting McLaurin?
That's a good point. I was trying to add that up. I don't think so.
No, start 10. I don't think you're starting McLaurin. So
true.
Whatever. No, I think I'd probably hang on to the second then, because I like the McLaurin is a descending value asset regardless. Fair. So I think it's and in 0.75, but like 0.75 premium, good. You may end up getting more for Sanat in 6 months.
Maybe. No, that's a good point.
Like, there are a lot of people that like Ben Sanat. And if he comes out and like does the Luke Musgrave or something like that, where like, I mean, Musgrave scored a couple of touchdowns and people are like, oh, look, he's great. I'm like, still talking, you know, if that happens in a 0.75 premium league and people are like, ooh, I could get the next Dalton Kincaid.
There you go. Yeah. You make it sound so enticing. Yeah. Should I liquidate DJ Moore for a 25? No, that's not enough. And keep DJ Moore. He's the one bolstering the back end of that wide receiver room so you don't have to start McLaurin.
Yeah.
In a no PPR league, 12 teams who flex contender, should I take trade a 26 first for Baker Mayfield? No. It's more.
I mean, I don't mind it in a super flex.
My QBs are Kyler and Bryce.
I would in a superflex at 26 first.
For a contender, Baker's probably a good get for that.
Honestly, if I might trade mine if you're a contender. But I look at the two picks. I'd look at the two teams and be like, if I'm a contender, I'm going to trade my pick because I'm betting that this other pick is lower than mine, unless you think the other pick is going to be the best team in the league. And then what are you doing trading for Mayfield? Because you're going to get your rear end kicked by the. No, I don't know.
Yeah, trade your own first if you can. If you're a contender,
like if you think you're going to win, I wouldn't mind giving up my own first to go get Baker. I mean, it is gross. But
no, I've been thinking that I've got him in a few teams, and I'm not thinking contender, and I'm like, he should really have value to some contenders, but it's hard. You can't. I don't try and convince other people. But the way to deal with that is that when you are a contender, you can recognize it. So yeah, good point. I want to do it. I need a running back. I only have Ben. Then do it, Genji. You're giving me a headache over this. I don't want to tell you my team in a start up 3 copy team. You won't believe it. This is just 3 Jeffersons, 3 CD Lambs, that kind of thing. Yeah.
No, how about what would you think of a start of Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Kirk Cousins, and Cooper Kupp?
Okay, that's all right.
That's a lot of. That's like Tommy B is just salivating over this team with his arms race quarterback strategy.
True. If you have a top 5, top 10, and top 15 QB in Superflex, are you looking to move one for top value without a clear need elsewhere, or just sit pretty? I mean, if you don't have a need, you're probably not thinking about it harder. No, if you don't have a need, why are you trading? Trades are for need, and if you don't have one, then you probably shouldn't be making trades. Now, I would say you normally have a need, whether it's improving your value or securing your value for the future because you're going to compete this year, or a position that could maybe be a bit nicer. But no, if you don't have a need, there's no need to execute a trade, so you sit pretty. Yeah. I tried getting a mid-range or cheap QB like Goff, Watson, Geno, Stafford, Carr, Cousins, etc. Or should I run it with? I would run it with Kyler and Brees. I mean, just see what happens with Brees. But I mean, I can't remember what your roster was. You don't have to start a QB in a super flex, and if your roster's nice enough, you can manage it. But I think Brees it's fine to see it play out for now. You don't have to make an unbalanced trade or overpay for someone just because you're starting lineup right now.
Yeah, that's the one that's a standard league, so no PPR, 12-team superflex. Okay. I still don't mind going to get I don't think the Mayfield one is bad. I really don't.
Mayfield's solid.
I know it's gross, but I don't think it's that bad.
A first for Mayfield would be absolutely fine. Especially
the first commenter of the night said Mayfield is going to be top 5 this year, so you might as well just run with it.
Oh well, that settles that. I have Caleb, Anthony Richardson, Kyler. I mean, it's fine. Holding all 3.
It's so funny to me how down you are on Anthony Richardson.
I react to other people's reactions. I shouldn't do it. But yeah,
so his legs are going to make him a top 10 quarterback.
I know.
So I know it's ugly, and I know it's not the way you like to score points and whatever, but and I don't think he's a good quarterback.
I'm fine with running quarterbacks. I don't like thinking it until I've seen it, and I haven't seen it with Richardson yet. So not with that level of value. That level of upside he definitely has. I don't know. It should pay off. Yeah. Ayuk is elite. Genji, you're the only one not elite. That's what. No, you're elite too. Devontae Adams, I see the vision. Finally. Hopefully you don't miss out on the Lord Rashee Rice. I mean, it's kind of a window if you want to get some Rashee Rice right now. His value is probably even, but people are willing to trade him. Or Jaden Reed. No. I went 0-3 on Adunze, so he's just Rama Dunze now. Oh, fair enough. Thanks for keeping us updated on that. Good day, gentlemen. Good J,
Hey,
kid.
Mass.
Nice to see you again. Terry McLaurin, top 24 wide receiver this year.
I mean, maybe.
I think that's what he's done before. That's his ceiling kind of range,
But so here's the rub is Jaden Daniels is potentially I would say he's a better quarterback than what McLaurin has had for the last few years. But he's a rookie quarterback, and the volume is probably going to be lower than what, like the overall volume, the team volume. Like rookie quarterbacks generally don't throw for a high volume, even the good ones. So I think you got to kind of temper expectations of if Terry McLaurin being a top 24 wide receiver was his best year so far, duplicating that with a quarterback who's not going to throw as much is probably not happening. No? I mean, am I wrong on that?
No, I agree. Yeah.
You're making
Malik
like
Neighbors.
smug Peter Howard.
No,
face.
I had an itch, literally.
Yeah.
Malik Neighbors, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns. Book it. I will not book it, sir. But yeah, that. What do I do with Michael Mayer? I mean, he just kind of sits on your roster, and you're like, why draft a tight end if you're just going to turn around and draft a tight end? You just say that every now and again, and people understand.
Buy a Raiders shirt.
Best answer. Philip J. Fry, how do you value picks in a 1QB 12 team? I mean, I don't know how to. And next year, a flex spot will be added, start 9. How does this impact strategy on roster construction? Well, the number of starters starting every week increases the pool of players that become interesting. The more you start, the more depth becomes slightly more important, and the opposite is true, the fewer. Now, start 9, I would say, is a stud-like league. Starting 8 means that your starting lineup has to be pretty high end to be competitive. Starting 9 is pretty much stud orientated. So yeah, and that's the main way it would affect. As far as how value picks in a 1QB, how do I value picks? I know I like as they're valued. I would say in your level of league, the depth of picks becomes less interesting. Like this year, we've got 5 players in like our tier 1, and they become the sole focus in a start 8 or a start 9 because most of the players have access to upside that doesn't really make you as startable because you're starting a smaller number of players every week, meaning that you need a higher points per game every week, which means those depth players are less interesting. You see the balance. Yeah. I guess that's the only way I can tie a pick value into it. Am I missing something, or could I be explaining it better there, Zay?
Oh, I think you hit it.
Oh, I just ate 36 Oreos. That sounds nice. I'm pretty hungry. Wix equals first round
just
pick.
reading my mind.
No. I can't believe you made me say that. It was illegal for me not to say it, and I still can't believe you said it. Peter has always been biased on Drake London. That might be true. I was a little lower on him coming in because he likes Drake Lester better. Probably.
He was wide receiver 5 for you coming out, or maybe 6. Huh. He was wide receiver 5 for me coming out. It was the like everybody else was like Drake London is the wide receiver 1, and it's like no, but he's fine.
We're low compared to others. Yeah.
I guess.
Drake Lester, yeah, GOAT. Jefferson has been a top wide receiver for 3 years now. For him to continue that, it's not super likely. I don't understand the words that you are saying. Who do you think is? That's the opposite of how I think. I think players that have been consistently in the top 3 are more likely to be consistently high-end producers. I don't think the turnover is nearly.
Tyreek Hill will never be a top receiver because Alex Smith made Tyreek Hill. Oh, wait. Tyreek Hill will never be a top receiver because Patrick Mahomes made Tyreek Hill.
I think what you might be thinking of is regression. If a thing keeps hitting high number, eventually hits a low number. But this isn't. I don't think that's the right form of logic we're applying to this. It's more like.
And again,
if Drake London is better at catching a ball 10 times out of 10 than me, he's probably going to be better at catching a ball 10 times out of 10 in the next 10. It's not going to regress to where I catch 5 and he catches 4. Like, he's just better at catching a ball.
So all of this, like, you don't have to try to convince us that your trade works. If it works for you,
I think the trade was fine. The value is there.
If it works for you, like, that's fine. But you're not gonna change our mind giving us faulty logic. Like, we're more than like, you're fine. Like, your trade was fine. You got good value. I think, to me, it leaves you with less opportunity to improve your team long term than Jefferson. But, like, that's a difference of opinion, and we can have that. And it's your team. So, like, if you're happy with getting London in the 2 first, like, more power to you. Like, don't take it as you're wrong and we're right, because that's not how this works. But we're telling you what we think, and not, it's not the end all be all. Like, there's a reason why my show is called the Dynasty Dummies. We chose that very carefully, not because we're idiots, but because nobody knows. And the people that are trying to tell you that they know what's going to happen, they're trying to sell you something. Don't buy it. You're muted, but you look good. Still muted, but you look good. You are muted.
Apart from the fact that you're killing me and I need to tell you that, I'm joking. The only thing I want to re-emphasize here is, again, I'm not disagreeing with the trade. It was a fair value trade. I think it's the first thing I said. I just disagreed with some of the ways you were presenting it, and you continue in those, which is fine. It's just my idea. So I'm just going to emphasize it. Jefferson scoring that many points out of 1 roster spot is worth more than 3 players scoring that many points in 3 roster spots, or 2, or however many worked out in this this idea that you had that you will outscore it. Because, if I have a 20-man roster, I'm outscoring Jefferson every week. But you see, you can't compound the idea there. The point is that Jefferson gives you access, and relatively few players do, and to those extra 500 points after you do well enough, because you have to do really well to build a team that's hitting that baseline every week, and you need points over that to compete against good teams. I think the chances that someone becomes that out of any rookie draft is 2 out of 12, in that about 2 players in every draft class getting some sort of access to that. And not every draft class has them. That's the average. And we get actually more than you'd expect to produce top 12 seasons, or to produce a certain points per game. Actually, we're relatively consistent, getting kind of a lot from most draft classes eventually after the first 3 or 4 years. The number of draft classes that have players like McCaffrey or Jefferson that acquire that larger percentage of those difference-making points are few and far between, because relatively few players actually gain that larger percentage. Don't know why I'm doing the bear hugging motion, of those extra 500 points. That's why they're so valuable. That's why, even though Tyreek was a sell last year, before everyone tells you he's a sell next year because of his age, I never actually advised anyone to do it, because even though I don't know how I feel about him, he's one of the few players in this era that has significant ability to co-opt a large share of that 500 extra points. He's just one of them. It doesn't matter if he's 31. He's one of the few players that can actually co-opt that larger percentage. Now, that's neither here nor there with Jefferson, but it's the same kind of thing. He's just one of the few players to have been drafted that can gain that larger share, and that he has consistently produced it. Might make you feel like there's a regression or a whoopsie coming. But the other thing the history shows is that those players come back after a whoopsie or a down year or a bad coaching year. Like, that's what happens consistently. And that's why I said I didn't understand the words you were saying before, because that should create the expectation that Jefferson is actually going to be one of those guys, instead of thinking it makes it less likely. Again, I'm disagreeing with some of your ways of seeing where scoring comes from or how to build a dynasty roster. But like I do rate my league shows, I see 12 ways of building a dynasty roster that are different than my own, and all perfectly successful. And to Zach's point, yours can be successful with being different than my own. I'm just trying to articulate why I think differently, just for fun, I guess, and to give you some thoughts to chew on. That's why we do this, not to correct anyone else's way of playing. 12 teams, start 11, Superflex PPR, 6 points per passing touchdown. Trade Amon-Ra St. Brown, the 104, and a 25-second for Burrow, the 106, the 107 in this year's draft. I'm assuming all these picks are. Let's see. Amon-Ra in a Superflex. So Burrow's got to be equal or greater than Amon-Ra St. Brown, so that's about even. So you're just getting the one side's getting the 4 and the second for the 6 and the 7. I prefer the 4, so that side wins that. So I guess the question is Amon-Ra St. Brown or Joe Burrow worth more for you, Zach? I'm not sure. I think it's about even. It all looks about even. I think so. I side with the quarterback, but I hate trading down in that rookie draft.
I'd take St. Brown, I think, and the 104 rather than Burrow, the 106, 107. It's close. This is close.
It's close. Because Brown and Neighbors in a second for Burrow and Brian Thomas and Xavier Worthy.
I mean, you might be in doomsday territory too.
Yeah, true.
You might end up in Bowers territory. You know what? It's Burrow, but it's because it's a super flex. And as much as I hate giving up on Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's Burrow. And then see if you can trade the 106 and 107 and get up in the top 3. and then you crushed it.
That's how you win. Sorry, I did read through all these last time, I think, especially about the extra 5 months. So yeah, appreciate it. Cool. Kirk also had Pierre Garçon. Well, there you go. Deshaun Jackson and Jordan Reed. He had Jordan Reed for like 3 games a season. I remember. I was so in on Jordan Reed. And Deshaun Jackson, yes, but he was injured one of those years, and then I can't remember exactly. He didn't have Deshaun Jackson fully. When Kirk was playing, Pierre Garçon might have been his best wide receiver most consistently, and there was also a running back. Was Morris still there? No, he didn't have the equivalent of Diggs, Thielen, Jefferson. Oh, it's close. When some nice pieces passed through there. I was hoping you would remember better. I'm not the league history guy. Those guys are actually good compared to London and Pitts. Not elite? Then okay. You can't evaluate the Falcons guys with Ridder and Terry Heineke at QB. And Arthur Smith. True, which means you also don't know if they're good. That's the only thing I'd do with that. We don't know.
I mean, I'm going off my evaluation of London from
Rookies.
Him coming in. Yeah,
that's the only evaluation I really do. Hopium. Yeah, and it's also on the narrative, but whatever. It's not hopium. You can't throw the ball to yourself.
Giselle Bundchen. She said that.
Garrett Wilson hasn't finished in the top 24 either. I'm not going to argue Garrett Wilson. Again, the evaluation I do is rookie profiles.
Garrett Wilson has seen 147 and 168 targets in back-to-back seasons.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So one of these things is not like the other.
Oh, you don't want to play this game, Scribbles. Most top 10 wide receivers don't have a top. And by the way, top 10 QB, that's not elite. Don't have a top 5 QB. Top 10, I'd say probably most of them don't either. There's a balance, but like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, cool. Notice none of the other wide receivers pop off. Aaron Jones had Randall Cobb. Who was great. He was a top 24 guy, and then Jordy Nelson, but then he kept being Aaron Rodgers even after Jordy Nelson was gone, even though everyone betting who the next Jordy Nelson was has been wrong because Jordy Nelson was gone. Kelvin freaking Johnson had Matthew Stafford, who is significantly high talented and underrated NFL QB, but has always been a middling fantasy QB, if that's what we're arguing the top 10 from. Like, And you also had Puka Nakua and Cooper Cup. I'll point that out. Good enough is good. Andy Dalton was the guy who fed AJ Green. Like this has been done ad nauseum, but the simple factor is that just having elite QB doesn't mean you have elite wide receivers, and having elite wide receivers doesn't mean you have an elite QB. The equation doesn't net out that way. There's some sort of balance, but it's kind of different for every offense. I'm not going to pull up the database and stuff, but yeah, you don't need an elite QB. You need good enough. You need Andy Dalton. Terry McLaurin scored 15 points per game with Heineke. That's true. Probably. I'm not looking it up. AJ Brown, 17.5 with Tannehill. Yeah, we're not redoing these arguments. We're not. There's a reason Corey Davis didn't do 17.5 points per game with Tannehill, and AJ Brown did. That's mostly when you and I've written articles about this, which is why I'm not pulling up stats and having the full argument. Like, read one of them. There's a reason that I'm so I've been harping on about vacated targets. The best conclusion we can reach is that wide receivers control their own destiny, and that QB and wide receiver can often operate independently in terms of overall production or finish. But there is a balance to be struck in each case, which is kind of unique. I think these simplified arguments trying to find a silver bullet are the real LVP. They're terrible. They're all bad. And anyone who gets on a horse about all of them, I mean, they just don't work evenly through different players. All the balances are different. There's a reason Stephon Diggs took his targets with him out of Minnesota, and yet they still had Justin Jefferson. Like, wide receivers control a lot of this, even if a good quarterback is definitely a benefit. I mean, to Jacob Rickrod's point, when me, Zach, and him all had this conversation out on my podcast, and there's Larry Fitzgerald has made some serious points about wide receivers not appreciating what they have because he has suffered throughout his career with bad quarterbacks and yet still been pretty good upon it. So yeah, there's also a difference in real NFL versus fantasy production, to his point. Every argument I ever heard for Jefferson is he was bad because he was hurt or Cousins was gone. Okay. This year he doesn't have Cousins at all. I've never argued he was bad, and I'm telling you, I can't defend an argument I didn't make.
The games that Justin Jefferson did not leave last year, regardless of quarterback, 24 points. This is PPR. 24.9 points, 27.9 points, 26.5 points. He got injured, missed games, came back, left the game, and then 15.4, 26.1, 10.9, 36. Justin Jefferson was not bad. Like, it doesn't, like, he wasn't bad. There's
I remember.
He's good. He's just good. There was no bad Justin Jefferson. There were games where he didn't play. He didn't score many in those.
No, I in a league I won last year, I had Amon-Ra St. Brown and Justin Jefferson. For the first half, Justin Jefferson was carrying me, and then when Jefferson went down, Amon-Ra St. Brown carried me. Like, I remember he was good. But also we're talking about fantasy points versus good and bad, and I think sometimes those words get intertwined based on the way we're having or what conversation we're having. I'm always talking strictly fantasy points, to be clear. I don't know, maybe he's terrible. Or maybe he was terrible in the games, but his fantasy points pretty consistently good. Those two usually line up, but not always. Let me see. No, I can't defend an argument I never made. I don't think he had a bad year last year. I think he got hurt. And I think that's a reasonable thing to expect a player to score less total points because of.
But points per game, he finished as the wide receiver 5 with 2 games that he didn't play full games.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I'm confused by why he was bad. I don't know when he was bad.
We're just like we're at a circular argument where Richard is trying to make himself feel better about trading away Justin Jefferson. That's fine.
If he is, to be clear, again, I don't think he made a bad trade. The value is there, which is the thing. See if there's another way of phrasing it. I don't think Drake London ever trades for as much as Jefferson does next week or the week after or the week after, and you're giving up all those weeks. Now, is it possible you draft someone at one of those picks that does? Yes. Trades for more than Jefferson does by then? Yes. But I don't think they'll ever trade for more than Jefferson does right now. And you've got 2 swipes at the apple, and so it's about value, and the picks don't fade. And there's a lot of reasons to like that trade. That's what at value means. But you're already giving up what most anything can be. Like Jefferson's literally like one of those players who no player is really worth more. So like that's the highest asset you can have. Now, did you get fair value for it? Sure, but it's a purely building move, and mostly we're gonna not like those. You know, that's it. It's a dynasty playing roster construction thing, not a value argument. We're agreeing on the value. But the points you're bringing up to back up the idea that actually he's not the highest value thing is weird, because he is right now. Like check ADP, check most of the trades. Like that's as much as a player can trade for. Justin is healthy now, and oh god, got a QB. Yeah. It's not. Yeah, it's very difficult to be a top 5 wide receiver. Very few do it, and so the ones that do it a lot, like they're probably more likely to do it than most. That's all I'm saying. In fact, they're the ones that repeat in that category. Top 12 especially. Top 5 is a little more nebulous because you're looking at a smaller target. Scott Fishbowl drafts are almost here, boys. I need a source for Scott Fishbowl ADP, by the way. I thought I found one until I noticed it had no rookies in it, so I'm assuming it's flawed. But yeah, I need that to build my sheet. I haven't quite done.
How do you get ADP before the draft?
Not ADP. Well, you do from mocks and stuff. That's what they were producing last year, just to get an idea of where players are going to go, so you can create a draft board. But yeah, tight ends have been flying off the board. They score pretty heavily in the top 12 overall. Looking at the last history, yeah. I think wide receivers. I think the scoring favors wide receivers, and I hate saying that because it's such a dynasty thing to say. You know what I mean? But because of the number of flex spots, more wide receivers are viable starts now, and less running back. It's like a start 1 running back league. That's what it eventually created.
I'm picking 7th in Boston Live, so it's the Will Hunting division, and my strategy is to meet Leo Pasiga early in the morning, to take the green line in and to have brunch, and after that nothing bad can happen. Nothing is going to derail my day. Like that's just where we're at.
Sounds like a pretty good day.
Yeah.
I plan to find a way there, make it there successfully. Like that's I don't even know how I'm doing that. I plan to plan. That's where I'm at. Doesn't do it, and if not, he's more of a wide receiver 6 to 8 compared to the wide receiver 1-2. That's a lot less value after that year,
but still more value than London.
All Justin Jefferson has to do is play 16 games and he'll walk into a top 5 finish. I know, Pete, that's so disrespectful, you sleeping on Richardson. I know, right? Tannehill a couple years ago was definitely better than Ritter. You mean when he had A.J. Brown? Yeah, he was pretty good then. That's what I mean to be so flippant. It's just I want to go to bed. And I've articulated this as well as I can. All being said, if that were to happen, I'm trading back into Jefferson. Yeah, here's the thing. Yeah, maybe the Pearson in your league will tilt. I think most people were like, oh, Jefferson had a down year. I don't think you're getting cheaper Jefferson after a bad season by much, at least. Next offseason. I really don't. And also, I think that's harder to do in season because while it sounds like a smart, savvy move, most people in your league are aware that they traded for him off you, and now I'm trading them to you for less. I don't like that. It's a lot harder to execute.
Anchoring bias and sunk cost and all. Yeah. Look, we're in
And
psychology
also,
now.
he's still this old, and now they've
Yeah.
got a better quarterback or better coach, and the narratives will build. And most people just don't want to give up something they just paid a lot for. He got benched 4 times. Are we talking about Jefferson being injured, so he was taken off the field?
No. I think we're talking about Ritter.
Oh yeah, Ritter was generally bad. No question. No one cares. And no one cares to disagree. Why haven't you sold Drake London yet? Is a better question. I mean, honestly, if you're building, yeah. I mean, his hype bubble can't get any big. So if you're building, the risk is he plays and he doesn't fulfill it. I mean, he could pay it off. It's about the trade, I guess. But the film is good, and he's getting a big QB upgrade and a new coordinator with significant target competition added. Who are we talking about now?
London.
Oh, yeah, he's good. He's been pretty good. I think I disagree with the way of evaluating. It's not like you get a QB, therefore you're able to earn a significantly larger share of the target share or do more with it.
No, but
the
number of targets should be bigger with Cousins, and I agree with that.
Possibly.
And the quality of targets,
I think possibly it's not
because
be better. Cousins isn't as successful as he was in Minnesota. I think
that could be too.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and so I'm not betting strongly one way or the other on it. So, I just feel like Jefferson has looked at the same this year like he was last year. And he's going to get either a backup QB or rookie QB tossing him the ball. I still think that's stud love. Yeah, but to your value question, if he has a bad year, the next offseason, people who invest in narratives will be like, well, he just had his first bad QB. We'll know all of this then, and people who trade or invest based on narratives will continue to do so. I just don't. Jaden Reed, greater than Drake London.
Let's not go that far.
Nah, discourse. True. Don't disrespect Sam Darnold like that. I will. I have in a show. No. He's all right. He just needs everything perfect for him to be elite. Like I've just been saying, if you just set up everything perfectly, even maybe do it for him a little bit, then he'll be all right. Zay Flowers or Jaden Reed? Zay Flowers. Easily. Sorry, Gidgy.
Yeah. I'm
assuming if you disagree, you'll look up and do it. No, I love the argument. Trade is what it is. What it is, I'm good with it. I just like the JJ talk because he's looked at a guaranteed top 1 to 3 wide receiver. There is no guarantee, but if you say I was to make an actual bet, which I really don't do, and I had to pick 3 wide receivers to finish in the top 3, Jefferson would be one. He is one of the best bets to do it. That's what I'm saying. He is one of the best bets. He's not less certain because he did it. He's more certain because he did it. But if you take into account the situation and the narratives, and yeah, I can see why you think it's a weaker year, but player to player, and there's not 4 other wide receivers I bet on doing it. No. Easily could come up with arguments for multiple more than that, but still. Have you written off Dobbins from being draftable even in Superflex? I actually traded for him at the very start of his offseason, so I like stacking running backs on running backs for second picks or less that I know are somewhat capable in the league. So no, he's draftable, especially in a dynasty. God knows what's going to happen with that.
And that team should run a bunch, so why not?
And that's kind of what he does.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for him to get healthy. Garrett Wilson actually looks good. The eye test, that's what I was secretly using this entire time. He literally looks like Jefferson and puts his volume. Those to left. He puts his volume. I agree. He does put his volume. Josh Gordon had Brandon Whedon, dude.
Yeah, but Brandon Whedon was seasoned. He was a.
There's always an argument.
He was like 32 when he came into the league. It was great.
T.Y. Hilton struggled through Andrew Luck. That was rough. I don't know. I'm just saying things.
Oh, but he had Dante Moncrief on the other side stealing targets from him,
who wasn't able to do it for some random reason, presumably. Yeah, I think the go-to, or used to be the go-to, was AJ Green and Andy Dalton, and that should be the expectation. It's not. Andy Dalton was a top 5 QB once, by the way. It's not that you have to be Aaron Rodgers. It's just that you have to be better than Brock Osweiler. You know. I guess a good question would be, where do you see Jefferson getting drafted next year in a startup? Top 5 picks in a superflex. Like, he'll be where he is. Do you think he falls more than that?
I mean, I think he's probably somewhere between 6 and 10 right now. 6 and 8.
Hang on,
6 and
superflex?
9.
Oh yeah, it should easily. Yeah, quarterback.
But
right?
but yeah,
he'll be in the same range.
But yeah, I mean, he's not going to fall. I mean, at worst, he's going to be like late first to mid second. Like at worst, like he could fall to be like the wide receiver 4.
Oh, I'm doing another thing, by the way. I'm just ignoring it. Yeah, I think he'll be in the same range. He'll be 26. Yeah, he'll be exactly where he is right now.
Yeah.
Same question for London, Garrett Wilson, and all players. I think it's a good way to look at upside versus risk for players.
So I agree with you there, but it's not. We're not saying that Garrett Wilson and London don't have upside, but you're paying for that upside where Jefferson already is there. Like you're paying this to get this, hoping he's this.
And if that happens, those extra 2 picks are the plus. Really significant.
If something that isn't going, or I shouldn't say isn't. If something that probably isn't going to happens, then you win. If the thing that is most likely to happens, then you have to hope that your team is bad enough that your first round pick is enough to help you. Like, and that's all we're saying. Like, it's just, we do a lot based on the likelihood of things happening.
I'm not even sure I'm using what has happened 9 times out of 10 if you look at this set of modifiers. Like a guy who's done it before,
right?
Whatever, in this career year at this age. Top 3 wide receiver. Top 3 wide receiver, Richard? Can't see him going lower.
Yeah, you mean Jefferson. Yeah, Jefferson.
I think that was a better way of answering it. He scored 33 points with Nick Mullins. My goodness. Can't even keep track. I'm trying to look up something. No problem. Larry Fitz comes to mind with middling. Yeah, I mentioned him.
Yeah. DeAndre Hopkins.
And had more.
Brock Osweiler.
Yeah. I wish Jacob was here to remember that quote. Because he threw that at me when we were talking about this.
Pete, we're so close.
I know. Well, there's always DJ Moore was a wide receiver. What is this? Wide receiver. Oh, I don't know why I have this ordered by. But he was really great last year with Justin Fields. Yeah, he's not a top wide receiver anymore, right? I don't know. Sorry, I know we gotta go. AJ Brown and Henry. Agree.
True.
Going to bed. Not sure if I want to trade worthy away. Stop it. Next week will be argument time for Chase. That's cool. Following on, we're going to keep the talk about the top guys on us. I'll be honest with you. I don't think selling the top wide receivers is where it's at. I think it's selling the depth, like London. We're in a wide receiver bottle. That doesn't mean the best wide receivers in the NFL fall in value. It means the Drake Londons of the world become worth a lot less.
Well, but there's also this.
That's what happened last time. Anyway.
There's a huge group that scores similarly
in there, and the value's too elevated right now.
Sell the top guys of that group for the middle guys of that group, and get your picks like that. That to me is the way to do it. Not trade the cream of the crop for the middle guys. It's trade the top middle guys for the middle guys. And
Yeah, I
and
think when
still
you're in
have
a
the same-
bubble,
yeah,
as we are with wide receivers, it's not about selling the top 3 who are more likely to fall not as far, if anything else. It's about selling the depth. It's because too many are being sold at too high a value, not because the top guys are too overvalued.
right.
Like that's how a bubble works, I thought. I don't know. I'm not an economist. No problem, man. Going to bed knowing Bijan will eat all the volume in Atlanta. Probably the target volume, too. Thank you as always. No problem, man. I love Flowers more, but Jordan Reed, top 36 rookie wide receiver, makes him top 12 eligible. Technically true. Also true of Flowers. Brandon Whedon Neeson's Chris Winkie. True. Better be Zach Wilson. Oh, rough.
Be better than Zach Wilson's not good.
Don't disrespect the red rifle. I would respect. Oh, whatever. Genji. DJ Moore was wide receiver 6 with Justin Fields, for goodness sake. There you go. He is now a returner in the league. So apparently you don't even need a quarter. I shouldn't throw hate at Justin Fields.
Peter hates running quarterbacks.
Yeah. That's why I have a forever dispute with John Hogue over Lamar Jackson. Me in the pro camp. I'll just point that shit out. Trade Drake London for Jane Reed. No. I mean, maybe.
Pete, we made it. We made it.
We've stumbled over the finish line here, but I think.
Only one of us stumbled over the finish line. I wasn't looking anything up. We're here, but look over there.